Welcome to a new episode of MF and Block Podcast. This week, one of my favorite hobbies is bourbon, drinking bourbon, hanging out with friends, drinking bourbon, talking about bourbon to people. And it was going to happen. There was going to be an episode that was going to be bourbon related. And Jake, I actually came across Jake's Instagram page. Either you had followed me or I had followed you at some point. And I watched your reviews and we became friends and we talked back and forth about bottles and picks and it's great to have you on, and we're going to talk about tons of bourbon stuff. But Jake, introduce yourself for everybody that doesn't know who you are.
Well, it's good to be here. My name is Jake Youst. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio.
I pronounced it wrong.
Oh, it's okay. Everybody does. Everybody thinks it's Youst or Youst. Yeah, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I do bourbon reviews and tastings and love going on barrel picks and whatnot. My Instagram is the Tipsy Barkeep. And I'm also on the board of directors for a 501c3 called Bourbon Charity.
Charity does a lot of really, really great work, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's been awesome. We're nearing $1 million raised, and we've only been in operation as a charity for about 2 years. So yeah, it's been awesome.
I was in the Blackout barrel pick group, and they raised a lot of money. And it's nice to hit marks like that, though, and it's good to do the good things that those groups are doing, for sure.
Oh yeah, and speaking of Blackout, dude, I've been fiending after that Four Roses pick so hard.
So they just bottled one of the last things that I was in that group was we did a Four Roses bat with a bunch of different recipes of single barrel picks, and I believe we put some small batch select in there as well.
Nice.
But that got bottled, I believe, today. So I have 2 bottles coming from that. I'm only one guy, so you're one guy. 2 bottles. You never know what could happen.
Hey, you never know. Oh, that's cool, man. I didn't know you guys were doing a vat.
And I bought this Blackout shirt a long time. It's real faded now, but that's why I'm zoomed in so far.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that PS 27.6 OESV that was done by Blackout. It's just phenomenal.
Which was that the Sopranos one?
I forget what the was. I think it was the Sopranos. It was 130 point something proof.
If it was the Sopranos, I was on that pick.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to shoot one of my buddies a message that has one and have him send me a picture of it. But I tried it and it's just phenomenal. I've been feeding after a bottle of that for a while.
So when did you get into bourbon or whiskey in general?
Pretty much right when I turned 21. I started out with Scotch and got really into Scotch. Didn't really know a whole lot about it. I just knew I liked it a lot, and I started drinking more and more Scotch. And then one day I was at a bar in Michigan called The Reserve. I'm pretty sure it was in Grand Rapids, and they had Old Weller Antique there, and I was just like, shooting the shit with the owner, and we're just, we're talking about whiskey, and he showed me this, and he was like, "Hey, this is like a pretty premium whiskey from Buffalo Trace," and I was like, "Oh, got to try it." So he just poured me a glass of it. He and I were just talking, and I tried some, and I was like, "Oh, this is phenomenal." So that night I had them make me an old fashioned with Old Weller Antique, which at the time sounded absolutely sacrilegious, but now I'm making cocktails with Old Weller Antique all the time, and so that's kind of what got me.
Didn't you have a video where you made a cocktail with Pappy on maybe it was Old Rip or something?
No, I made one with Blanton's.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah, people got really triggered about with that one. That was funny.
You really flipped Instagram on its head on that one.
Yeah, that was fun.
So what were some of your first experiences with bourbon? Like, what were some of the first bottles, like outside of the Old Weller Antique? Like, what's some of the first stuff you remember getting into?
Well, my gateway was Old Weller Antique. I tried Blanton's a little bit, and I thought it was good, but then I started getting into the barrel picks, and the way I got into barrel picks was actually Eric Bowman I came with a cork and bottle, and he got me a bottle of Old Weather Antique at cost. He didn't make any money off of it or anything. So I drove down to Kentucky, and he gave it to me. And while I was there, he and I kind of like hung out and talked. So I ended up coming back later, not that long after, and lo and behold, he's no longer actually. So when he and I met, he was at Depps, and then he moved to Cork and Bottle. So I came to Cork and Bottle, and he had a barrel pick of Blombro's Not a Rye, and I'd never had a barrel pick of anything before. Yeah, I've got one sitting open in my box in the other room.
What I was going to go to after the Elmer.
Oh, dude, that stuff is phenomenal. And I remember I tried it. He's like, he told me what a barrel pick was, and I was like, whoa, that's awesome. And he poured me some of that, and I took a sip, and it felt like I was in the Wild West, like kicking open the door of a saloon, like slamming my gun down on the table and my coin down on the table, like, give me some whiskey. And that's what I felt like I was drinking.
Sit down at the poker table and ante up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I at that point I was just like, what have I been drinking up until this point? This is the best stuff I've ever had. So yeah, it just kind of evolved from there, like especially due to Eric. I mean, he just gave me a ton of samples from his personal collection, and I started doing reviews in these little booklets and taking all of my notes down, and then he started procuring more and more samples for me, and introduced me to a bunch of bourbon groups and whatnot, and yeah, so he got me hooked.
So with all the hype that is bourbon now, have you hopped on the rum bandwagon yet?
Rum, not as much. I've had a few really good rums. I worked down in Nicaragua for a little bit, and there's a company called Flor de Caña, and they have a 25-year. Okay, so it's 25. It's not actually 25 years old. It just says 25 on the label. And some doctors got that for us when we were going down to work with them, and they got us each a box of Padron cigars, like a really rare, just limited release of the Padron cigars. And every single night we'd smoke these cigars and drink the rum on the balcony of our porch after working in the hospital for the day. And that's what got me hooked on rum a little bit. I've had a couple that are just phenomenal, but I haven't really dove into it like I have bourbon.
Well, the Grander rum, I met the owner, and he had told me the reason that he got into rum in general was 90% of people that drink rum drink really shitty rum. And he's not wrong. Like Captain Morgan isn't good rum. Sailor Jerry is not good rum.
I'd hardly consider it rum.
Right? And there's so much stuff added to it. I mean, it's its own thing at that point. It should be its own category of a drink for sure. I do like some rums, preferably aged for a long time, possibly finished in a different kind of barrel of some sort. So you said scotches. What kind of scotches? Like, are you a heavy peat kind of dude, or are you going like Speyside, or where are you at with that?
I mean, I think all of them have their place. I mean, if you drink anything from ILA, you're probably going to wreck your palate. No, not anything. There's some ILAs that I've had that have been actually, they drink more towards a Highland or a Speyside. But I love the really heavy peated stuff. A really good everyday drinker for me for if I'm wanting to do Islay and heavy peat is going to be the Ardbeg Wigadil or the Corey Vrecken. Those are both just fantastic in my book and pretty easy to find. But I usually go with Highland. I really like Glenmorangie. Nectar d'Or is one of my favorites. The Aberlour Abu Nad is a good cask strength one that's pretty accessible. But I don't really dip my toes into Scotch anymore now that I'm into bourbon. I definitely think bourbon is far superior.
I would second that. So you've been on a handful of picks, and I'm sure with the charity you guys probably do some barrel picks as well.
Yeah.
And me being on, or me having gone on picks, I know what I look for. But when you go, I know there's a lot of people that go on barrel picks and they think we're going to discover like the next greatest thing ever. And for me, I'm just picking the best out of what's available to me that day. But what are you looking for? Like say you go, have you been to Knob Creek to select a barrel of Knob Creek?
I haven't done Knob Creek yet, actually. I have tasted through some barrels of Knob Creek. I'm friends with the fire chief there, so we've gone into the back and like just dumped some stuff and tasted through it. That was awesome.
It's really good stuff right out of the barrel.
or just dumping like 15-year short barrels and like just, hanging. So that was cool, but I haven't done Knob Creek yet. What I usually normally look for on a pick is kind of the same thing what you said. I'm not looking for the best, barrel I've ever picked in my entire life. That's not going to happen every single time, especially with these, younger distilleries or distilleries who aren't really any distillery. I mean, if you're getting proof down whiskey, my opinion is everything needs to be sold at barrel strength. So like if you're doing a proof down pick, you're not going to get the best thing ever. Like it's just not. When you have water mixed in with whiskey, it's diluting the flavor. You're not going to get the best barrel ever made. You're just going to try to get the best one available. Now, if it's my pick, I'm not going with cork and bottle or I'm not going with bourbon charity. It's my pick. If I go there and there's something that doesn't absolutely blow me away, I'm not getting anything because that's a lot of money for something that's, I'm just going to be like, oh yeah, this is good. So what I kind of look for going into the pick is, as soon as I sit down at the table, the very first thing I notice is the color. I remember the very first barrel pick I ever did. It was New Riff with cork and bottle. Eric and I sat down at the table, and I remember sample number 5, the one on the far right, was significantly darker than the rest. And this is Eric and I looked at each other, and we're like, it's going to be number 5. And sure enough, lo and behold, after we get done with the tasting, we picked number 5. So the color is the first thing I look for. I always go in this order: look at the color, nose it, and then palate finish. So I go like one by one at a time, and completely do the tasting on every single whiskey before I move on to the next one. This way I'm able to get like the full, I'm able to get every aspect of each whiskey before I move on to the next, and I'm able to do a comparison between each one. So finish is obviously huge, but I look at the viscosity on the mouth. I just, the different tasting notes. But the more I've been picking barrels, the less I kind of am concerned about the tasting notes. If they're the same thing, they're the same whiskey, they're going to be fairly similar, kind of like along the same baseline with some variants. But yeah, that's about it.
I think for me, like which one drinks the best? What drinks the best right here, right now?
Yeah.
And like I can sit around at home and kind of pick things apart if that's what I want to do. But which is one thing I did want to ask you about for sure. I've watched a lot of your Instagram reviews and a lot of when you're filling out your book, the tasting book with everything, which I should probably pick up because that thing looks extremely helpful.
It's awesome.
But like how did you really like just break it down and zero in on tasting notes or just your palate in general? Was it like one of the tasting kits? Also, your memory is really good as far as things that you have tasted in the past, and you will taste something and be like, oh, this reminds me of something when I was 12 and my grandma gave me a piece of candy.
Yeah.
But like your memory is really well, but because I mean I can obviously pick out like those cherries and vanillas and caramels or brown sugar or toffee or a lot of the tobacco and things like that. Like I get that for sure. But there's things, and I want you to know that I respect what you say about things, unlike some people that do reviews and talk about marzipan. But I watch your videos and I like them, but like how did you just like really break it down and be able to get what you get out of it?
Yeah, so like, a lot of it is just what you said. I try to relate it to things that I've had in the past. I like to cook a lot. I travel a ton, whether it be with the army or just, travel in my own time. And anywhere I travel to or anytime I cook, I try to do something from different parts of the world. And that brings in a lot of different flavors, a lot of different flavor combinations, aspects, textures, and everything. So the variation from what I cook and what I eat, I remember that. And I'm able to distinctly like categorize that with a certain country or a certain time that I was like, I remember when I was, this is one I reference a lot, 2014 GTS. That one was very specifically reminiscent of the dates that I had in Morocco. I had gone to Morocco not too long before trying this, and I'd had fresh dates there right off the cart, and that flavor was, just an automatic connection. As soon as I took a sip, I was like, that tastes like the Moroccan dates. So there's not really any trick to it. It's just like repetition of eating a bunch of stuff, like thinking about these flavors and then being able to bring that back up in the future. Other than that, I mean, there's really not a great way to describe it. It's just memorization.
It's just tasting things.
Yeah, it's just tasting a bunch of
Just
stuff.
taste things.
Well, that's the same thing with like doing these whiskey reviews. It's like it's just you have to review and drink a ton of different whiskey. It's not doing one whiskey a bunch of times. It's 1,000 different whiskeys 1,000 different times, and that kind of like variation between everything lets you differentiate. Okay, this one has cherry vanilla. This one has cherry vanilla. But oh, okay, so this one is branching off with some sort of odd flavor, while this one is branching off with some sort of other odd flavor from like the base that's like big cherry, big vanilla. You know.
So out of the picks that you have been on, which experience was just like the coolest experience?
Oh, okay. So
New Riff does a really, really good job of
yeah,
just making you feel welcome, making you feel like you're special, to be honest.
yeah.
But New Riff does a really good job, and I like going there. But for you, which experience like really stood out?
Nerf was super cool because they do something that's different from everybody else. They give you a sheet with all the barrels on them, and they have like the tasting notes from the lab on them, and you get to select which barrels you want to choose, like want to try and pick from. So I think that's pretty cool. Um, Wilderness Trail gave us a really cool tasting experience. I mean, you know, without going into too much detail, we got to try a lot of barrels, and that was a little bit unexpected. And we
They're
got
really cool and laid back there, Wilderness Trail.
what's that?
They're really, really cool and laid back there.
Oh, they're awesome. I love everybody at Wilderness Trail. They're super cool, and the master distiller is just brilliant, absolutely genius. He's
Is
amazing.
Patrick the master distiller? Or
What's
is
that?
is Patrick the master distiller
Yeah.
there? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you finish, but I've got a very interesting story about him.
Okay. Yeah. So that's really cool. That was one of the best ones I've had. And then also Nulu does a really good job. Nulu, we go into the warehouse, right? And we do the barrel pick. It's at a table. All the barrels are surrounding you right in front of you. You watch the barrel get dumped into this giant vat, like they lift it up on a forklift and then they dump the barrel right in front of you. And then you see it filtered right in front of you. And then you actually help bottle everything up and you take it home the same day,
Oh,
which
that's cool.
I've never been to any other distillery that does that. So I think that's really unique and pretty awesome.
Beam used to let you bottle Knob Creek that day, but it all depends on if the line is running, what they're running. It all depends. But I think if you did the early pick, they would let you start bottling it before you left.
Oh, that's cool.
So interesting story about Wilderness Trail and Patrick. So working at the airport, at the bar at the airport, this gentleman walks up, and I did not notice anything he was wearing at all. And we had some of our Wilderness Trail picks on the shelf behind me. And he said, "Let me get one of your Wilderness Trail weeded picks, the high rye bourbon pick, and that rye pick." And I was like, man, I love Wilderness Trail. I love what they're doing. I was like, they used to troubleshoot for all the large distilleries, and like if something came off the still and it wasn't supposed to be, or it wasn't what it was exactly supposed to be, these guys would come in and fix everything and make it what it's supposed to be. And at some point, they just said, man, why aren't we fucking doing this for ourselves? And then they did it. And I'm glad that they're doing it because they're making really good shit. And he looks at me and he goes, "Hi, I'm Patrick, and I'm one of those dudes."
That's
And
awesome.
he was wearing a sweatshirt, a hooded sweatshirt with the logo, a t-shirt with the logo, a hat with the logo, and I had paid zero attention. I was like, I mean, I guess I could have just looked at you.
That is awesome. He first of all is genius. He's absolutely genius. Dr. Patrick Heist is his name for anybody listening.
I didn't know he was a doctor. That's very interesting.
He teaches at, I believe, UK. It's one of the Kentucky universities, and he teaches like biochemistry or something like that. But yeah, he has a PhD, and I heard he teaches. So this guy, he's just like ridiculously brilliant. He is so nice, and he's very passionate about what he does. And I think their rye is probably the best Kentucky rye regularly produced.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the single barrels I've tried.
Huge fan. And that's actually funny. So he probably got the bottle that my face was on.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
Was that the weeded or the?
that was the weeded.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
bought one. For sure.
That's awesome. I'll have to shoot him a message about that. I actually came home from, I think when I lived in Spain or something. I don't know. I was coming back from a deployment or something, and while I was in the airport at CVG, I came up to the bar, and the pick was there, right? And I sat at the end of the bar, and I think Function was there, and these guys were all there, and like uh, Function was like, "Hey, you guys should try this," and they're like, "Oh, okay." And he brought out the bottle, and he's like, "Does this guy look familiar?" And pointed to my face, and I was just kind of like chilling at the end of the bar with my head down, and they're like, "Oh no, I don't really know who that is." And then he was like, "Look to your left," and then I was like, "Hey," and they're like, "Oh, we gotta get it now." So everybody tried it, and it was awesome.
So I do. I've got a little game I want to play with you for this next question,
Uh-oh.
and it's it's only because I followed you for a while and I pay attention to things. Um, if you could only have one bottle to drink, of course this would be a bottomless bottle. If you could have one bottle to drink off the rest of your life, what would it be?
Okay, so one bottle specifically, not like
Just one single bottle, one bottle that you've had that you wish was just an infinite bottomless bottle. Which one would it be? I wrote down what I think you're gonna say.
did you think it's some Four Roses bottle?
No, it's not. I know how much you do love Four Roses. However,
Obviously.
oh
Um 2003 GTS probably.
man,
See, I haven't had it yet.
you haven't.
No, I haven't tried it yet.
You did get a bottle, right?
Yeah, I got a bottle. I haven't
You just
opened it
haven't
yet.
opened it.
No, not yet. I'm going to.
Well,
Yeah, no, I haven't tried that one yet.
we'll do this again in 2 months, and I'll keep that piece of paper.
Yeah, man. That would be a strong contender, but like I had that 2003 GTS, and that was just ridiculous. I mean, so this being said, for my selection for this, I left out Dusty's. I've had some like 1917 Old McBrayer Bottle and Bond, and that was just absurd. I mean, that's like cherry cola, sassafras, like goodness. Um, but like, yeah, anything 2000s and up, probably 2003 GTS. There are some bottles that I mean are just right up there with it, but if when I think about bourbon, that's what I think about is '03 GTS. Like just in your face, dark, deep tobacco, chocolate, leather notes, and high octane, but drinks at a lower proof. It was just phenomenal.
Shelby Jones let me chug the last 3 ounces of his '05 fall
Oh man,
jag. He had
oh,
like 3 ounces, and he's like, I don't feel like carrying this home.
that is awesome.
So he made me chug it, and it was the most delicious chug I've ever had, hands down. So now that you're definitely like, I mean, you're neck deep into bourbon. Is there anything that you wish you would have known when you started that you know now?
That Four Roses is the best distillery.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I there are a lot of bottles that I've purchased that I end up getting rid of because I'm just not excited about them. Now that I've had so many things, I mean, with all the reviews that I do too, you know, I don't buy the bottles of everything that I've tried, right? We get samples sent to us for whiskey consensus, and I ended up tasting and reviewing a lot of these things. And really, okay. So A, Pappy is overhyped.
Yes.
Um, B, well, newer Pappy, I should say. B, Blanton's is way overhyped. And C, yeah, Four Roses is the best distillery. I bought like I wish I would have started getting Four Roses picks as soon as I got into the bourbon game. You know, I love MGP. I love, you know, like all the BTAC and all that good stuff. But like for something that you can get as a barrel pick, something that's not incredibly rare, not super expensive, Four Roses just consistently does it the best, hands down.
I'm with you. What's your favorite recipe at Four Roses? And for everyone that doesn't know, Four Roses has 2 different mash bills and 5 different yeast strains. And that equals 10 recipes.
Yeah, so there are 10 different recipes, right? And there's different barrel runs of each of them. So to pick one single recipe is definitely difficult because you know you have stuff like this, which is Cheers OESV. It's a PS 27.6, which means the south side of P Warehouse, barrel run number 27. It's on the 6th tier, and this is barrel K. So if you're going from A to Z in the lineup, it's barrel K. So what's really difficult, the reason it's difficult to pick a specific recipe is because this particular run and then the run before this, which was PS 26.6, these were just unbelievable OESV. I absolutely loved them. They're some of the best whiskey I've ever had, right? Well, the current run, which is PS 37, it's not that impressive to me. I think it's still really good whiskey. It's still better than your average whiskey, certainly. That being said, it doesn't impress me as much as this. I've had some OBSK from 2013 that blows my mind. One of the best whiskeys I've ever had.
You get any of those Four Roses bottles with a gold paper neck?
What's that?
If you get any of the Four Roses picks with the gold paper neck instead of the faux leather band, congratulations. You know what it feels like to touch gold.
Yes. Yeah, the gold necks are awesome. I wish I could get more gold neck OBSK. I mean, I've got a gold neck OESV that I just got on a trade not that long ago. It's like 126 proof or 128 proof. And I forget what the run on it is. I'd have to look back at it, but I'm really excited to try that. All the gold deck is 2014 and prior, I believe. It's either 2014 or 2013 and prior. But yeah, it's the current run of OESO is great. Some of the older OESO I'm not a huge fan of. So it's just all dependent on the specific barrel run. And something I love telling everybody this: 65% of flavor in whiskey comes from the composition of the barrel. Distillers only have influence over 35% of their whiskey, which I think is insane. And they don't control the quality of these barrels. The staves of the barrels are thrown into this vat in water, and they're floating in water. And at the cooperages, they just pick them up randomly and hammer them in. So it's not like they're controlling what staves go into what barrel to get everything equal, so that the char goes deeper and pulls out more sugars, or goes not as deep and pulls out less sugars. It's not controlled.
Random.
Yeah, it's so random. So that's how a honey barrel is made: is that you get a bunch of these barrel staves that have loose wood grain, and the char gets deep into them, brings out a bunch of these natural sugars, which the wood also has to contain a lot of natural sugars to be brought out. And then the whiskey's dumped in there, and that's why it's a honey barrel. All these natural sugars get brought out. So even within these runs of really good whiskey, like really good runs that shine from Four Roses, there are specific barrels too that are like some of the best. And this one right here, the Cheers PS 27.6, I think this is one of the best of the PS 27.6 run. So
I'm a big Oakland Raiders fan, and our friend Jeff Kaplan is a huge Miami Dolphins fan. The Raiders just covered the point spread in their last game. So Jeff Kaplan owes me an OESK, just a random barrel pick OESK. So there you go, Jeff. I mentioned you. I didn't tell you I was going to, but I did.
That's awesome. OESK is fantastic, man.
With the OESK is my favorite recipe. I mean, it's wild because it's actually the lower of the rye content with their recipes, or with the two mashes. But that K yeast just brings out a lot of spice. It's just full-bodied, spicy. And what's interesting is they're usually on the lower side of proof as far as the single barrel picks or the single barrels go. Because a lot of the OESKs that I've had have been like 104, 106, somewhere in that proof.
Sure.
I mean, every once in a while you get a higher one, but the OESKs seem to be a lower proof than most.
Yeah, and that's the thing. People freak out about about tiers at Four Roses.
My favorite Four Roses single barrel was a OESK. It was tier 1, and it was creamy as hell.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's where the barrel composition comes into play, man. Like, the only thing that tier determines with whiskey is how high the proof is going to be. And this is just at Four Roses specifically. Probably the same with other distilleries, but I'm speaking only to Four Roses. The higher the tier, there's a 45-degree Fahrenheit difference between tier 1 and tier 6 of the Four Roses Rick House. It's not that high. It's like 15 feet or something like that. It's not very high. But there's a 45-degree Fahrenheit difference, I think, in the summer. I forget what exact time of year. And because of this, because it gets hotter up top, the water molecules don't expand as much, and the alcohol molecules expand more, allowing the water molecules to leave the barrel when it expands. The alcohol molecules can't leave and stay in, and thus causing more water to leave, more alcohol to stay, higher proof. And that's what drives the proof up in these higher tier barrels. That's pretty much all tier determines. It can also determine like how far the barrel's going to expand and how much interaction the whiskey has with the wood. But I'm not really super familiar with the science behind that. That could be determinant on the barrel composition as well. But yeah, so it's just all dependent.
So a lot of the new, well, not just new, it's been happening for a while, but stores, private groups, they've been trying to attract attention to their single barrel picks by putting some of the most ridiculous stickers on these bottles. Some of them we laugh at, some of them may piss people off. I know that there's been a slew of political stickers that have been put on them just to piss people off, and
Yeah.
it definitely does exactly what it was intended to do.
Always.
But my question for you, does that sticker make that bottle taste any better, Jake?
Does not make it taste any better whatsoever. It makes it look cool, but stickers have their place. I like them because you can take something funny that happened or like interesting that happened on the barrel pick and slap it on there, and it's like an inside joke. I've got one particular barrel or sticker idea for a barrel pick that I have not disclosed to, I think, anybody but one person maybe, and I'm saving it for the right barrel pick. This is like on my bucket list. It's got to be on the right pick though, and it just makes it cool. It makes it interesting. It makes it kind of fun. Doesn't make it taste any better.
I like the sticker idea. I mean, for stores, you almost have to be a store. Everybody's competing with each other. You clearly want to sell your barrel out as fast as you can. So I mean, the attention makes sense. Like, why not market? You know what I mean? But it's really cool for smaller groups. Like we're in the Juice Club, the Northern Kentucky Cincy Juice Club, and a lot of those stickers, it's inside jokes with the club. Like, it's just inside jokes with the almost 3,000 people that are in there now. But it's just inside jokes, and there's definitely a core group of people that interact more so than a lot of other people in that group. But we all kind of seem to get the inside jokes, and it's kind of funny. It's pretty funny.
Right. It brings some humor to it, and it's just fun. I mean, if someone thinks it makes it taste better, then that's their prerogative. It doesn't, but it's still fun. I mean, it's a blast. That's why I love a lot of that's why I love knowing Four Roses, is because I don't have to look for the tater stickers. I can just look to see what barrel run it is and what barrel number and everything and what recipe, and I can know that's going to be really good instead of having to look at something that's like like panty dropper sticker or like Jumanji or like some honey buns or something and being like, oh, that's a cool sticker, that must taste great. I can just skip over that one and get something better.
Twix Russell's Reserve picks.
The Twix ones, oh yeah, that was huge. That was a big one.
They did like 4 of those. They continued to do it. Like, it was the same sticker. It would just be like Twix 2, Twix 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, man, this feels like the movie Major League at this point.
Oh yeah.
So the bourbon has definitely been marketed a whole lot more, definitely in the last decade, specifically probably heavy the last 5 to 6 years. I've been drinking whiskey for a long time. Certainly before I was supposed to legally be allowed to drink whiskey, I've been drinking whiskey. And I went through the natural progression of, like, in high school, I'm partying with people and drinking Jack Daniels. And then after high school, you're more sophisticated, so you move on to Maker's Mark. And then when you start drinking, your pinky goes in the air and you're like, I can only have Woodford, sir. And then I discovered Russell's Reserve single barrel store picks, and I was ruined after that.
Oh yeah.
And you have people like, for instance, Blanton's that you were talking about earlier. Blanton's was introduced first into the Japanese market in 1983, and then in the U.S. market in 1986. There are people that have been drinking Blanton's since 1986. because of the marketing that happens within the Sazerac company now. Blanton's is not something that you can readily get. And it's wild because there's proof that these bottles do sit on shelves in other countries. However, they can't keep up with demand here while the product sits on shelves in other countries. Uh, is that not a giant middle finger to like 30 years of loyalty to a brand? Like you're going to get people that are going to buy a different product because of that. But I guess my big question there is, has marketing ruined this for the people that have been around for a long time?
I would, yes, definitely. You know, a lot of what Buffalo Trace, and I like Buffalo Trace. I think they're the,
They make great whiskey. I don't want to take away from their quality. They make great whiskey.
yes,
It's just and it's not Buffalo Trace. It's clearly the parent company there that's doing it.
yes, it's Sazerac.
And you can almost see that the people that work at Buffalo Trace hope that you don't ask the question that I'm asking right now.
Oh
Like
yeah,
they almost dread like, why can't I get this? Especially at their gift shop, like the Buffalo Trace gift shop, they have to sell their product to a distributor and then buy it back. So it ends
right.
up actually costing more than you could get it at Kroger or wherever you're going to get your liquor from. It would almost cost more to buy it at the gift shop just because of the way the laws in Kentucky are. So it's just wild.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that it's killed it too. I mean, Buffalo Trace and Sazerac, they have absolutely dominated the marketing game. I mean, they've driven, mediocre whiskey to be so sought after that people, line up and stay overnight at liquor stores. They line up in the mornings, and this is just for mediocre whiskey. Do I like, would I get doing this for a really, really outstanding, amazing bottle? Yeah, if you got nothing else to do, I might do that. But for Blanton's or Buffalo Trace or Eagle Rare, no, it's not that great. It's just the marketing has pushed it to make everybody think it's so amazing that it just kind of ruins it. And this goes on and on with different brands. And I mean, Four Roses has recently spiked immensely in price for barrel picks, and it's just kind of ruined everything. It's driven up the price on everything else, and it kind of sucks.
Now I do like that there are so many smaller, or for whatever reason people want to call them craft distilleries. They're just doing it on a smaller level. It's not like they're doing it any different.
Right.
But like I'm glad that New Riff exists, and I'm glad that New Riff is successful. But when you have these companies coming in with the product that they have, and they're charging $50 to $60, and not necessarily them. I mean, you can even look at there's companies that are sourcing NGP product. I don't want to name any names really because I don't want to call anyone out like an asshole. But if you buy a barrel of rye from a company and you let a group pick it, like I mean, at 6 or 7 years old, should you really charge $130 a bottle?
No, I mean, it's
But you have those smaller distilleries doing that. So at the end of the day, like even Knob Creek prices have raised. Knob Creek used to be one of the best, like Knob Creek single barrel picks. I mean, you're getting 14, 15-year-old bourbon for $45, and clearly that's now like 55. So they've raised their prices. But I mean, I'm glad that these smaller distilleries exist, but I feel like they've kind of driven up prices as well, demanding 50 to 60 for something that's way less than what these people were asking $40 to $45 for.
and that's why I like New Riff too, is because they keep their prices pretty reasonable. I mean, think what they're selling the picks like $45 or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and they're great. I love New Riff whiskey. They're doing such an outstanding job, and that's why I love that Eric started picking with him early. He's doing like a pick a month, right?
It's
And
insane, man. We do a lot of picks there.
oh yeah, you guys do a ton, and they're just getting better and better. And someday, New Riff is going to be huge. I mean, the stuff that they have right now is fantastic. I really love it. I could drink it all the time.
I'm a
Um,
huge fan of the single barrel rye.
oh, it's awesome. Well, that's
1934 was probably my favorite barrel of rye from them. But they have a lot of really good, really, really good single barrel ryes.
yeah. I've had some of the single barrel ryes, and I love them. I wish I could pick 10 barrels of it, right?
Yeah, I hound them every chance I get. Anytime I talk to Alina or anybody involved with New Riff, I'm like, whenever you guys want me to come down and put a straw in some of these rye barrels, I am game.
Oh yeah, I would do that any day of the week, man. The reason that these like smaller, younger distilleries are putting out such good rye, and their bourbon is now don't take this any other way, is seemingly falling behind the rye, is because rye hits its peak age before bourbon does. Not necessarily peak age, but like the kind of the sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
So like, if I'm starting up a distillery, I'm distilling rye and bourbon at the same time. The rye is gonna taste at its like sweet spot before the bourbon does. So don't get me wrong, New York bourbon is amazing. I love it. It's so good, especially for the age. Not even especially for the age. It's just good bourbon.
It's just good whiskey.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
great. But the rye right now tastes a little, a step above just because it's closer to the peak age. The New York bourbon right now and rye is like around 5 years old, right?
Yep.
Rye's sweet spot is about 6. Bourbon's is like 8. So 7 or 8, So that's why the rye probably tastes better right now. Same with Woodford Trail.
You can get 4 and 5 year rye that's just ready to drink. Not that it's the best thing you've ever had. It's certainly not the worst thing you've ever had. It's just ready to drink. Whereas there's plenty of young bourbons I've had where, man, it's just, I don't even know if it has potential, but it certainly isn't ready.
I've had to review some for Whiskey Consensus that I give like a 0.05 out of 100 and say it's an embarrassment to the company. It's disgusting. Like they should be ashamed of it. Like I do a bunch of reviews. Oh yeah. I put those in my Whiskey Consensus reviews. I want them to know. I mean, they're sending us the whiskey. They're the ones that are putting it out, selling it to people. If it's trash, I'm gonna tell them that it's trash because.
So Watershed's a huge fan of yours, huh?
Oh, they hate me probably. They hate me. Yeah. The only good whiskey in Ohio is High Bank Distillery in Columbus.
I've heard good things. I haven't tried it.
It's really good. I would highly recommend the barrel proof and the midnight cask. The double oak's pretty good too. I really like double oak, but the barrel proof and the midnight cask, especially the midnight cask, I could crush so many bottles of that. It's awesome.
So I've definitely seen you. You mentioned earlier about cooking a whole lot. I've seen your posts about like special recipes or even recipes that you guys have within the family and things that you just like to cook a lot. So food, bourbon, pairing them together. What's your favorite dish with your favorite drink? Like, what do you like? And you can definitely do multiples here. We don't have to do a favorite. But like, what do you really like to pair together as far as bourbon and food?
So I'm going to kind of go in the opposite direction here. I don't.
Okay.
So the only time I really pair bourbon with anything is a cigar. And even then I choose very closely because the cigar is going to kind of mute the finer points of the bourbon.
Yep.
When I'm choosing a bourbon to pair with a cigar, I usually do like a finished one, like Michter's Toasted Rye, or really anything finished, or something super high proof that's gonna punch through those muting aspects of the cigar, like Stag Junior or Elijah Craig Barrel Proof or something like that, or George.
So what I do as far as the cigars and whiskey, like I know I have a lot of friends that smoke Cubans, and that's fine. Cubans are good. But you don't want to drink something high proof and really punch you in the mouth flavor with a Cuban because Cubans are such mildly flavored anyway.
Right.
So if you were to drink something like say a Stag Junior that's 135 proof and you smoke a Cuban, you're not going to taste anything in that Cuban.
No.
Me personally, I tend to drink mostly higher proof. And I'm a big fan of Nicaraguan. Tatuaje is obviously my favorite brand.
Me too. I love Nicaraguan, man.
Pete Johnson is the motherfucking man. Pete Johnson is awesome. But a lot of times I'll be smoking a Tatuaje, or I'm big on several Nicaraguan brands. But I want something that's peppery and full-bodied so that it can kind of compete with what I'm drinking versus muting one another out, because I certainly don't want that.
Yeah, and that's why when I'm drinking these finished or high proof whiskeys with the cigar, I pretty much exclusively drink or smoke Maduros. So I need that like oily, sticky Maduro to go along with this high proof or finished bourbon, so that it's not a natural or something lighter, to where like the whiskey would completely mute out the cigar or vice versa. If I'm smoking something lighter like a natural, I'll definitely not be drinking something high proof or finished. I'll be doing something like Old Weller Antique, or like, I don't know, you name it, something with a little bit on the lower proof end, but that still complements really well.
You have a humidor?
Very small. I mean, it's like a box.
I'm gonna send you 3 sticks.
Oh, all right, all right.
And then you let me know what you think. I might take the bands and just mark them so that way you literally don't know what they are.
Okay, all right.
'Cause I know you like your blind tastings. That'll be fun.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. I'd love to do that.
So, alive or dead, who in bourbon history? Anybody. They could be alive now. It could be Brent Elliott with you loving some Four Roses. It could be the past master distiller, Jim Rutledge, if you're into drinking cream of Kentucky these days. Um, Alive or dead, who in bourbon history would you want to sit down and have a drink with? And that includes possibly dinner and a conversation, whatever. Who would you like to sit down and just spend some time with?
Well, last year I was blessed enough to spend dinner and some time with the late Al Young, and that man was such a fountain of knowledge that it was just. I mean, I learned so much just by speaking with him during that small amount of time. This was about like a couple weeks before he passed. Um, and that was awesome. Got to talk to Brent Elliott. He is the nicest guy. He's awesome. Again, just brilliant. Dan Gardner, though, Dan knows the science, and I really love talking to him. So the fact that I've spoken with these three people already, I'd love to be able to spend more time speaking with all of them. I'd love to go have dinner, have drinks, sip from some Four Roses, and just talk about it. But I want to talk to Jim Rutledge just because I haven't spoken to him yet, and just getting his aspect of where he came from and the legacy of Four Roses, passing the torch off to Brent. I'd like to see like what his mindset was and how he thought about these different recipes and what his methodology was with everything. I don't know anything about what he did essentially. So in some of these older releases, oh man, I mean, like, they're just unreal. I don't like some of the gold necks are just stupid. They're insane. So kind of knowing what his thinking, his methodology, his process was, that would be super cool.
I actually had a conversation with Brent, and I brought up Jim, and Brent had come through the airport once, and he asked I believe this was early 2020, and or maybe really late 2019. But he had asked me if I came down for the small batch the limited edition small batch, if I came down for the release in 2019, and I was like, yeah, of course. Me and my friends were getting drunk in the lot next door until 7 o'clock when you allowed us on the property, and we had a great time. And I got a bottle, and he was like, well, what did you think? And I was like, man, I'm going to be honest with you, Brett. My favorite limited edition small batch. I mean, those 125th anniversary fans, eat your heart out. 2012 limited edition small batch is hands down the best one I've tried. And thankfully, I have friends that like to share. and But that's my favorite one. And the 2019, at least freshly cracked, kind of reminded me of that. And I told him, I was like, I really, really liked it. And I was like, what's wild is that most of your small batches have been not necessarily underwhelming, just a little more tame and refined, which is not a bad thing because Brent's releases have been fantastic, and Elliott's Select is one of the greatest bottles of Four Roses in my mind. But I was like, that 2019 really reminded me of something that Jim would have did, because it was just more upfront, like there was just a lot more going on immediately. And he was like, it was that oak. It was those 21-year barrels I put in there. I was like, you're not wrong.
Yeah, that would do it.
And Al Young once had at least 15-minute conversation with me about how I needed to stop smoking cigarettes. And I mean, I'm still hitting this little thing, but my plan is to wean off this as well. But I have quit smoking cigarettes. It was after he passed, but I did stop smoking cigarettes.
That's awesome, man. That's good. I mean, coming from a medical standpoint, it's just that you're just killing yourself by smoking cigs, man. I've seen what it does to people. I'm sure you have too, but I mean, working in healthcare, I've seen it up
Well,
close.
even as a smoker, and this is the wild thing. I don't think I know that a good amount of smokers understand how gross what they're doing is, but there's a good majority of smokers that just don't think that anything about what they're doing is bad for them. And I even used to say it myself, like, man, I'll stop smoking when someone tells me I have a problem. And I'm like, why should I let this become a problem? This should never become a problem. I should just stop it before a doctor's like, hey, the conversation that Al Young and I had, I was on a barrel pick. It was actually the OESF that I helped pick for the BV riverboats a few years ago.
Nice.
And I was smoking a cigarette outside. I went back in. Obviously, I smelled like cigarettes. And he was like, how long you been smoking? And I was like, too long, Al, too long. And he said, you should really stop, man. And he was like, I stopped smoking a couple years ago. And I stopped smoking because I went to the doctor, and the doctor looked at me and said, Al, when do you want to die? And like that really changed the whole fucking conversation right in that moment. I was like, well, goddamn, Al, like we don't even know each other.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've ever talked to this man. So, but no, I thought about that conversation a whole lot, and it was definitely even before he passed. But I thought about that conversation a whole lot, like even when like it wasn't necessarily like my kids and my family were the inspiration for that, but that's a conversation that I think about all the time. And I thought about it before he passed, and now that he has passed, it's definitely something that comes up for sure. Like when I think about him, I think about me stopping smoking cigarettes too.
Yeah, I mean, he probably smoked for a really long time, and then ultimately,
He said his whole life, his entire adult life.
Yeah, man, and sure enough, he passed from lung cancer. It's no joke. Yeah, I'm glad you stopped, man. That's great. That's something really hard to do too.
It is. It definitely. I've quit worse things, so I was like, man, if this is the thing, like I've quit way worse shit. Like I got to be able to stop this, which I'm still getting nicotine. So apparently that addiction is strong. But what's cool with these though, I can level down on the nicotine levels and whatever, and eventually wean myself off. That's the major goal. But baby steps.
Yeah, hey, it's something. And as long as you're making steps towards the goal, that's what matters.
Well, Jake, I want to thank you for being on. This was
thanks for having me, man.
Conversation, especially when the world's wounds heal. We'll hang out and cheer some glasses for sure.
Oh, dude, I'm gonna get belligerent once this COVID shit ends.
And send me your address because I want to send those cigars, and you might just get a surprise package. Who knows? And I got stickers made for this podcast, and I'm going to send you some stickers too because
awesome. Hey, man.
I was going to sell the stickers, and then I was like, nah, I don't want to be that guy. And then I was going to do a giveaway, and I was like, that's stupid too. So I'm going to make these stickers, and only the guests. If you have this, it's like going to the Chappelle, like Dave Chappelle had these shows all summer, and people had the face mask that just had the C on it, and you only had that mask if you went to the show. So I'm going to go ahead and imitation is flattery, so I'm going to go ahead and steal that. You can only get these stickers if you've been a guest.
That's awesome, man. I like that idea. I will gladly take it and put it on something cool.
Hell yeah.
Put it on a bottle.
Well, you have a great night, sir.
Hey, cheers, you as well.
As always.
Cheers.